Hi, and welcome to Thousand Year Home. So, the goal for me here at this site is for me to build a home that'll last 1,000 years. And I think it's possible. And this is all, I mean, other people have done it. There's 3,000-year-old homes all over in the Middle East and China. The Great Wall of China is, 3,000 years old, the pyramids. But I am looking at using modern construction techniques to see if I can accomplish the same thing. So, this particular episode has everything to do with containers because one other constraint I have in this build is I have to build it as rapidly as possible. And so I've chosen to do that with shipping containers, ConExes, because they give me the 90-degree edges. They give me the lines that I need to be able to rapid build. So to prepare a good foundation and shore things up and do all that conventional home, one, I want to get the 1,000-year home. But two, I don't have time for it. From buying the house to being built, I have a little less than 6 months, 5 months. So today's episode will do with shipping containers. And as you could see, the first question to answer, of course, is will you be permitted in the area? Now I checked, and in my area, I'm fine. I could do steel frame buildings. I could do shipping containers. But then I started shopping. And that became a problem because I got quotes everywhere for $66,000 for a 40-foot high cube or HC, which gives you a 9-foot ceiling. The ceilings in this room are 9 foot. Actually, back in the kitchen, if you look, that's a 9-foot ceiling. Feels very spacious. And then another 18 inches up to give you the loft ceiling. And I'm going to do something similar to that by putting two connexes together and building a loft between them, raised ceiling. So, but first, find out if you're permitted. And then you can move forward from there. You don't want to buy something that you can't put anywhere. But anyway, I am permitted. Um, but with the shortages that we have and the price range, anyway, I went from everywhere from about $3,000 for an absolute wrecked one, clear up to 66,001 dollar one for one that had doors and windows cut in. Talking with some of the ConEx folks around in this area, one of the questions I was asked repeatedly, am I a corporation? They did not even want to work with the little guy. So, my first tip and trick when this thing is if you're going to use shipping containers, take a look at the rural community because farmers use shipping containers for storage on a regular basis. Stop at your local tractor store. Ask around who is selling shipping containers to the rural environment. Because if you try to do something that's trendy, they're going to charge you an arm and a leg for it. The next thing is during this particular this year, like the last 3 years, a crisis, right? And so I'm having a hard time getting steel and rebar. So I found some shipping containers at a local rural delivery service that uh, were reasonably priced. So I went out and I visited. I picked out two and I bought them. Now I don't have a 911 address, so my permits are still in process. So worst case scenario, I'd have to sell these out of my property. But I don't think that's going to happen. Again, I don't need a permit for steel frame. I need a permit for uh, permanent structures, and I need a permit for plumbing. So, and then the next question is, how are they going to deliver this to you? And I took a look at different ways of delivering online, and I was really hoping that at one of these side delivery methods would be used, so that way I could put down a foundation real quickly, drop the cube on it, and everything would be fine and dandy. But there's other options. There's this roll off method, like you see here. And then I've even seen gooseneck trailers, as in this picture, for them to be able to deliver. In all cases, a 40-foot long high cube is a serious commitment to get to anywhere. And so you'll need to make sure you clear a 14-foot wide straight path. Yeah, you'll have to talk with the shipper to make sure they can get in there. If you can, give them the aerial view before they get there so they get a feel for it. Mine was pretty iffy because I'm putting this way out in the woods as a literally way out in the woods across hayfields. That some of them were hard packed, but as you see later on, the shipping truck did break through, and then it was my neighbor rescued the entire operation with his bulldozer. Um, It's not something that this isn't a do-it-yourself kind of a thing. These are heavy, and you will need professionals involved here. Uh, but anyway, how to get this thing in? I bought these shipping containers as soon as I found them because of the shortages. As soon as I found them, so there's a little bit of a risk here, calculative risk that I'm doing, in that I've got them to the site before I have foundation, before I have piers, before I have plumbing, before I have permitting, before I have um, all these things. Fortunately, in Texas, I don't need permitting for temporary. So what I'm doing is I'm building a workshop. Now, might always end up being a farm workshop if indeed they come back and tell me I can't do what I wanted to do, and I'll have to realign at that point in time. But if this all works out, I'm going to use these shipping containers as the core structure, and then around them wrap them in adobe, either rammed earth or aircrete or styrofoamcrete, and build a loft in between that'll be the main room, similar to this room, which is a little shorter than what I would do. And then I'll have a fully functional, modern Santa Fe style home. And but dealing with shipping containers, um, they've hauled everything. They're old and in service, right? So you want to make sure, and I've seen them where they deliver them sight unseen. I would highly recommend against that. You want to put your nose inside this container. You want to make sure that it didn't haul fish or chemicals or things that are unable to be scrubbed out. You might have spend $8,000 or $10,000 for something that can never be used in a home environment. Um, um, so I went and found somebody that I could go on site, very friendly, to buy my shipping container. And so we'll jump over to that and take a look at the rest of this video. All right, I'm out picking out my containers. 8 foot solid right on that one. And you say 40 foot? Is it going to be 40 foot spot on when because I'm gonna, or should I download some
full of tape? But it's
full of tape?
40
40 foot. All right. Made some choices on some containers. Those are new ones, running about 10,000, 8 to 10,000 a piece. So I bought a couple of used ones. Let's see, I've already measured them, and they are 8 foot end to end for sure. I measured that. But 40 foot wasn't true. It measured a little bit different than 40 foot. It was 39 foot 10 inches, I would guess. So I'm going to have to think about that. That little 20 footer, the owner said, has had about 10 years of service out on the ocean. So these are made of coarse steel, spring steel. So they're designed to patina and not rust all the way through. So these particular used ones all look pretty good on the inside. And then the supports underneath, I'm going to go ahead and video one of those. They're designed to drive a fork truck on top, so I can go ahead and put piers underneath it, probably anywhere I want. So I'll go ahead and switch the camera around here. All right, taking a look underneath if we can. You'll see that, there's every foot, there's steel across there. And that's designed for the heavy fork trucks to get underneath there. So my goal is to get this things up 18 inches or so off a grade so that I don't have to worry about flooding. So we'll shoot with that. And so there's one of them, a blue one there. And then I went ahead and selected another blue one over here. Not that color coordinated such a big deal, but I picked another one. This one, both of them have a little charm. So I note some rust there. The hinge pins are hard to get in and out of, but they're solid inside, straight and true all the way down. Couple little dents there, but nothing major. And closing the doors, there wasn't any light leakage, so I know that they're watertight. So the terawaits, 8,488 pounds each. So moving these is going to be something else. All right, I think that's all the information that I need to get working. I've already calculated the foundations that I need on those. So based on 8,400 pounds. Eventually I'll pour concrete on the top. So I've aircrete's about between 20 and 60 pounds per foot, but it won't be 100% aircrete. There'll be things on top of it. So I've over engineered a little bit. So I put footings on the four corners. And then I'm going to put a footing pier, I should say, each spot down. A couple of them across where I think anything might be loading on the top of bathrooms, things like that. Uh, and that's it. There'll be a deck on top. And so my next job is to get the sites prepped. And guys will be meeting me next week to drop these off. Well, I asked the owner, I said, how long do you think these last? He said, oh, they'll outlast your life and then some, especially not on salt, right? These have been in service for a very long time. And I don't know, you go to an old junkyard, you'll find those leaf springs 100 years old. So that's what this steel is. It's leaf spring steel. So my goal is to turn this thing, wrap it around, encapsulate it in aircrete, protect it, preserve it, and design this thing to last 1,000 years. And I think that that's possible. And that's one reason I'm getting it up off the ground, so there's not the moisture contact to the ground. Any plumbing I run underneath, I could be able to service, or somebody can in 500 years. So not everything will last 500 years, but if you get it where they could service it, well, they could make it last 500 years. So that's the goal. We'll see. This here isn't much of a picture, but I'll go ahead and the inside of it. You appreciate how big these things are once you start walking around inside of them. They are sizable, but most people build out a little bit, do some insulation so you lose a little bit. These are high cubes, so they're 9 foot, 8 inches or so, 9 foot 8 instead of just 8-foot boxes. So you already have a commercially high roof. See, there you go. The first one didn't smell bad at all. This one, if you look, has been hauling tires, and so it smells like a tire shop. And that's something that'll get aired out. So this one I'll probably want to use for the solar, but I didn't give them any instructions on which one to put where. I'll adjust the house to match, maybe, right? And but tight, even. I'll switch the camera around. So, taking a look at the seams, there is no air. You can look down and see there's a little bit of bumps here and there, but pretty tight and secure. The floor actually, it has kind of a cool little industrial vibe. And if I put foam underneath it, maybe I could live with this in some area. So we'll see on that. The other floor was not nearly this nice. The plywood was well gouged up, but this almost, look at that plywood, and it's got a little bit of an oak, maybe a tropical wood feel to it. And then back here they were running a car sat back here, so and the big fork trucks come in and out of this thing, so I know I could put the piers where I need to. That one has the safety beam across it. So I did notice slight differences in the underneath, so. Alrighty. Well, thank you for watching this episode. It's all about picking a container. The next episode will be about delivery. So I took my time walking through this container. I want you to get some valuable information out of it, and kick the tires yourself before you get on site and start taking a look at containers. There's a couple of things I did off camera that you didn't see. For example, I shut the doors and I looked for pinholes of light all over. And the only ones that I found light was on the plywood floors, just in the back in a few areas. And since I'm going to be covering that flooring most likely, or spray foaming, I wasn't concerned, but no little pinholes of light coming through, no rust all the way through. There was a little bit of rust above one of the doors, but I took a careful look at all that. And the difference between these used containers and a new container was $4,000 a piece. And the new containers, they had a new container smell. You could smell the epoxy. You could smell the flooring, which is a preservative flooring. So you have to be careful of that. If I do use these floors on this, I'm definitely going to seal it. But I kind of like the industrial vibe on the one container. The other container has been touched up with paint, and I don't know if I want to sand all that down since they treat these for insects. So I don't want the breathe that insect wood on that. But you'll have to seal that over. But it's truly very important, in my opinion, that you don't buy these sight unseen. And when I was first looking for these, I Googled my zip code, shipping container, expecting that the container companies have popped up or in the area. And it was page after page after page of people anywhere in the nation. And, oh, I will ship them anywhere. You will ship them anywhere. And that's true. But I'm buying a used container that might smell like fish or rotten potatoes or have been used for pesticides or any number of things. Or even in this particular case, I was able to walk through. Well, this was a barrier, and it might be a barrier in your neck of the woods. So, the way that I got around it is I went out into the rural community, and farmers use these containers all the time, right? So, I asked my neighbors, I asked the tractor supply, hey, who sells containers in the area? And they gave me two or three recommendations of people right there in the area, owners that I would be able to meet with, and indeed, I was able to do that. I went to several other places, and their very first question was, am I a corporation? And they did not want to work with a homeowner and build any kind of container home at all. So that was a barrier. But I want to make sure that you don't have these, that you just don't buy a container because one's forced upon you. Do spend some time looking around for a yard that'll let you go and visit. The gentleman here just let me spend as much time as I wanted. You saw I measured and I went underneath. I looked at all the flooring, made sure none of those were rusted through. I'm out there in Texas where there's consistent burn bans, so I'm not interested in doing a lot of welding. I'll probably end up drilling through and bolting almost everything because I'm going to wrap it in some outer adobe anyway. So I'll use stainless steel fasteners because I can't have sparks and I can't have a welding slag igniting things. And I'll clear the area in one of these videos. You'll see I'll draw a box blade around it and I'll clear the grass and I'll have a safe zone around it once I get up high enough for insulation and foundation work. The the last few points that I would make about containers is it's very trendy right now for people to be building a container home, and I have a specific purpose of wanting to do a container home, right? I need the angles, and I want something for the adobe to cling to, and I need to rapid build. But if you're wading into container homes and you think, oh, it'll give you a huge head start, I honestly don't think so. I think that container homes have their purpose, and I want to recommend it for everybody. I've seen a couple of videos where people say, "Oh, it's a waste to cut up a container home, and you should be using local lumber and all of this." I think there's a stretch to say that you shouldn't use a container home, but what I am saying is I would not build a container home from a container that I had not looked at first, because there's considerable endeavor that has to go into building a container home anyway. And you want to make sure that whatever one you start with strong. And the ones that mine that have the surface rust, I've bought a chemical that I can use zinc phosphoric acid, similar to gun bluing, if you're familiar with that. And I'll gun blue the rust spots, and I'll take care of it that way. And then I'll wrap it in adobe to keep it preservative. But I would not buy one of these unseen because they've been out on the service on the ocean and have been battered, and all kinds of things have been thrown into them. So spend a few moments in your area, and if you end up getting spammed in your search engines with just people that don't care, spend a few moments and go out in the rural area and start asking some of the tractor supply companies and some of the farmers and co-ops where the local farmers buy theirs.
and I think that you'll be much more pleased, just as I was walking around the shop there and standing in your own container, and they wrote my name on it with wax pen. I felt good about that. I got a shipping invoice right from the start. They gave me my serial numbers, and then after I had made my choice, I didn't have to pay that day. He didn't make me pay until he delivered them, which was amazing to me. And but after he said, "Okay," we shook on it. He said, "Okay, I need these out of here in 3 days," and that's not nearly enough time to build a foundation. Even if I had poured piers, I would want 2 weeks for them to cure before I put these down in here. But there was a massive shortage right now, and it's been ongoing since the Suez Canal got stopped up and um, all kinds of problems with COVID. And then we're in the middle of a European conflict from Russia, and they're rerouting all of the shipping containers for that. And so, and I'm finding all kinds of part shortages. And the range that I was getting on these shipping containers, everywhere from 3,000 to 66,000, just really freaked me out. So when I found couple of containers in good shape that were of pricing that were reasonable and within my budget, I went ahead and bought them right on the spot. And then I had 3 days that I had to clear the path and make way for these containers to get out there. And so the next video after this will be actual delivery, and you'll see I'll run into some problems because of my super compressed cycle. And I hope you don't have any of these problems. But I wish that some of the delivery methods that I showed earlier, the side load, or you'll have to rent a crane. You just have to be aware that these are super heavy, and you need super heavy equipment to manage them. And while I'm using a floor jack later on to raise it up, they're set into place right where I want them. So, if any of this information was good for you, please like and subscribe. And I just enjoy having you along for the educational value. Again, it's a journal for me to kind of recall all of my decision making. So I'll make these whether or not I get a lot of viewers or not. But I do like the viewers. I do enjoy the company. Put your comments down below if you have specific questions. I'll take a few moments to write you back. And this is Steve for Thousand Years Homes, and I want to thank you for joining me.